What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. This isn't the 9x9. Instead, we are going to be previewing the 2023 Volleyball Nations League. My name is Everett Delorme, joined as always by my good buddy from Chicago, Mr. Rob St. Clair, and we're going to go through it. We're going to break down what the tournament is like, some of what the teams are looking like, and everything that's going on with the VNL. So, Rob, first and foremost, Rob, how are you doing? How are you?
I'm great, buddy. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited for VNL. National team season is awesome. It starts so soon. Women's VNL starts Tuesday, May 30th, and then the men's a week later. So digging into the women's tournament here, the first of many videos and all sorts of content that we're going to be doing on the Volleyball Source channel covering national team season. So I'm really stoked about it.
Absolutely. If you're one of those people who only watches national team season, no slight to you. Absolutely. Absolutely. We follow it all year round, from the professional to the international year. We're going to break things down, get you up to speed with what's going on with some of the teams. And of course, this is a big year for the international calendar. You got the VNL, we have the Olympic qualifiers later in the summer, and of course, we got the Continental Championships later in the fall as well, with Norsicas and Eurovolley and all of that. So yeah, Rob, how you feeling about this?
I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of storylines that carry over from the club season into the national team season. I think there's it's kind of nice that we've been covering the club season for so long, and we can just take some of how the players are playing, how some of the national teams are coming together based on what's happened this club season. There's been a lot of coaching movement as well.
Yes,
so I think there's a lot to get into here. But we're going to start off with kind of breaking down the format of the tournament and what everyone can expect. So Everett, take it away with that.
All right. So for the VNL, there is 16 teams, right? And there's two types of teams in the VNL. First and foremost, you have your core teams. Those are the teams that are always going to be there, aka they spend the big bucks to be able to be in the Volleyball Nations League. And then the second tier of teams is the challenger teams. Those are the teams who are always on the bubble, always have the potential of being relegated. So this year, the core teams, as always, is Brazil, China, Germany, Italy, Japan, Korea, the Netherlands, Serbia, Thailand, Turkey, and of course the United States of America. And the 5 challenger teams are Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Dominican Republic, and Poland. Croatia, coming up last year, they won the Volleyball Challenger Cup and moved up. They beat Belgium in the finals. And of course, if you're a returning fan, you know the disagreement, I guess, we would have, considering that Belgium actually won 4 matches and by far were not the worst team, whereas Korea didn't even win 4 sets and didn't win a match at all, and yet are still in the tournament. But that's what we have, all 16 teams that will compete in this year's 2023 Volleyball Nations League.
Okay, so as far as the schedule goes for the 2023 VNL, we've got 3 weeks of preliminary round play followed by 1 week of the finals. And for every week, you can see here on the screen sort of the schedule. Every week, the 16 teams split up into 2 sites, where 8 teams go to each site. Then you play for 6 days at each site, from a Tuesday to a Sunday. And during those 6 days at each site, each team will play 4 matches. So even though there's 8 teams at each site, each team only plays 4 matches a week. So you're not going to necessarily play everybody who is there at the same site with you. That is 12 matches total for the preliminary round of the VNL. So there's 15 other teams aside from your own team in the VNL. So you're not guaranteed to play everybody. You're only going to play 12 of the other 15 teams. And it's interesting to break down sort of the draw of who teams get to play versus who teams get to avoid. But as far as the schedule goes, week 1 starts very soon, this Tuesday, May 30th. The 2 sites, Antalya, Turkey, and Nagoya, Japan. Then a week off before week 2, that starts June 13th, Hong Kong, China, and Brasilia in Brazil. Week 3 is June 27th in Suwon, Korea, and Bangkok, Thailand. So 6 sites, 3 weeks. That's the preliminary round schedule for the Volleyball Nations League before we jump into the finals.
Now, as you might have noticed, there is no group stage dates in the United States of America, and that's because the 2023 women's finals are going to be coming to the USA July 12th to 16th down in Arlington, Texas. Hook 'em. It is going to be an 8-team single elimination tournament. So the tournament is going to go from 16 teams down to 8. One thing to note is how the USA qualifies. Because they're hosts, they're automatically going to be there.
All right. Very importantly, if you're looking to watch the 2023 Volleyball Nations League, where you can do that, every match live on demand, a whole bunch of stuff, all live on volleyballworld.tv. Volleyball World's over-the-top streaming platform. It's in its third or so year. I think it's third year covering VNL. And I mean, Everett and I make fun of Volleyball World and Volleyball World TV a decent amount, but given what we used to have to do to watch national team volleyball and watch the Volleyball Nations League, I actually think this platform is pretty good. It's got everything in one spot, and it's a pretty good value. So pick us up a subscription to Volleyball World TV to watch every single match of the VNL this year.
Now, as we mentioned, 2023 is a big year for volleyball, with the Volleyball Nations League and the Olympic qualifiers and the Continental Championships at the end of the summer. Now, every match now with the new ranking system matters for those Olympic rankings, and those Olympic rankings are those world rankings are going to be huge when it comes to qualifying for the Olympics. So every match matters, but Volleyball Nations League is a long tournament. You've got 12 matches in basically 6 weeks. How do you manage your roster, and how did you manage your team? So there's a lot of storylines and strategies that come along when preparing and executing the Volleyball Nations League.
Yeah, it's something that we really look at every year. Since the world ranking formula has changed, it's no longer based on how you finish in tournaments. Instead, it's based on the results of every single match that you play, and your world ranking, your opponent's world ranking, the result of the match. Like Everett said, literally every match does matter. And we've got the Olympic qualifiers later in the summer. But after that, like if you fail to qualify for the Olympics through those tournaments later this year, it'll actually just come down straight up to your team's world ranking at the end of the 2024 Volleyball Nations League. The next highest ranked teams in the world are straight up disqualified to the Olympics. So every match really does matter. And it comes down to the Volleyball Nations League every year. What is a team's approach? It's a long summer. We literally just finished the club season. These athletes are not exactly the freshest, especially if they played late into the month of May for club. How do you balance needing to win matches, both to make the VNL finals and to keep your world ranking high, with getting new players involved, getting your key or older players some rest? Like it's a very delicate balance there that every coach kind of approaches differently.
Each team has an extended roster of 30 players, and this 30 players is what they can pick from throughout the tournament. Leading up to each week, they have to name 14 athletes who are going to be traveling to each of those tournaments and who will be available to compete. So it's going to be interesting to see what teams pick what players. Like historically, they always rest some of their stars the first week. Just as we mentioned, Champions League finals were just a week, not even a week ago, Rob. Just this past weekend, they're going to be a week and a half out from the Champions League finals when they start the VNL. So we're expecting some of those bigger stars not to be there week one. So it's going to be interesting to see how coaches pick and choose their athletes, also to allow some of the younger athletes to come in and get some playing time on the international stage.
Right, but with that trade-off comes potentially not playing your best volleyball, maybe losing matches, maybe dropping in the world rankings. Like that's the balance that everyone's going to have to strike. And one particular team that I'm interested to see how they do this is the USA, because like you talked about, they're already qualified for the finals, and so I'm going to do a detailed preview of the USA elsewhere in a different video, like you're going to do for your maple volleys for Canada. But I'm fascinated to see that little wrinkle about the team that's hosting. How do they attack their roster for the summer? Because it really changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And it also gives us a chance to see some new players, some younger players, and to see maybe a bit of the future of volleyball. Although I do have to say, some of the best players in the world right now are all under 25. So I think the future of volleyball on the women's side especially is definitely right now.
So we'll get into all the teams here in just a minute, and stick around to the end of the video. We'll kind of make our picks. We'll pick who we think is going to win, a couple breakout players, some MVP picks. But before that, we're going to talk about every team. So we're going to trade off talking about the teams, breaking down what they're doing come into the season, talk about some of their players, talk about their coaching staff, and just sort of what we can expect from each team. So Everett, take it away with the first team, Brazil.
All right, let's get us kicked off with Brazil. And I mean, let's be honest, this is Brazil. They're ranked number 3 in the world. Last year, they finished second at the VNL. They picked up another silver once again at the World Championships. They lost to Italy at the VNL, lost to Serbia at the World Championships. But hey, it's Brazil. They're synonymous with volleyball elitism. Now, this roster is pretty much going to be the same as what we've come to expect from them, especially last year. The one notable omission from this roster is going to be no Carol Gatas, the ageless wonder. I think she's like 42 years old, has a torn ACL. That will probably be the end of her, especially national team career at that stage. But man, what a career it was. But this is definitely a team that's going to be gearing up and looking to win some serious hardware this summer. They're bringing back players like, of course, Gabi, played fantastically for Vakif Bank, Carol, Macris, the setter from Fenerbahce, Rosa Maria, Thaisa, of course, Anna Cristina, who had a massive year with Fenerbahce, the young player as well. So I think when you're looking at Brazil and what Zé Roberto, their coach, has available, this is a team that is going to be looking to win all the time. It doesn't matter if they're going to be working with, some of their veterans or some of the younger players. Whenever Brazil steps on the court, they expect to win, and that's no different in the VNL.
Okay, moving on to the first of our challenger teams. This is Bulgaria, ranked 16th in the world, 14th at last year's VNL, 17th at last year's World Championship. They were kind of one of those. There were a bunch of teams last year that all finished 4 and 8. And Bulgaria barely avoided being relegated. It was a couple points worth of tiebreakers that sent Belgium down instead of Bulgaria. And I got to be honest, I'm concerned about Bulgaria this year avoiding relegation. A couple of their key players that carried them scoring last year at the VNL and the World Championship are not on this preliminary roster. No Elitsa Vasileva, no Hristina Vuchkova, and their starting setter, Laura Kitipova, also not on the roster. So without that experience and that firepower, like those are really the only players that helped Bulgaria not get relegated last year, and they are not a part of the picture for this VNL. So they've got a couple younger scoring potential players, like this Maria Yordanova character is only 21 and one of their primary scorers from last year's VNL across from Vasileva. So she's definitely the future of the program here, but they are in pretty serious danger, in my opinion, of being relegated, which is on the line for all these challenger teams. Like we mentioned, only 5 of them. One of them will drop down to the Challenger Cup. I think Bulgaria is a pretty serious contender not to stay in VNL potentially, unless there are some serious young talented players that we don't know about right now.
All right, moving on now to my home team, Team Canada. Now, last year for Team Canada and Coach Shannon Windsor was hands down the best year in program history. They went 4 and 8 at the VNL. They were tied along with Belgium and Bulgaria, but ultimately had a pretty good VNL, finishing 12th, and then a best ever program finish, finishing 10th at the World Championships. And now the biggest thing for this team is that they've got everyone back. Alexa Gray is coming back off a MVP performance in the final match of the Scudetto finals for Canigliano. She didn't play much this year, but that means her legs are nice and healthy. Of course, you got Kira Van Rijk, who was one of our top scorers throughout the VNL and the World Championships. Of course, it's going to be a little bit interesting just because Kira Van Rijk did lose her mother earlier this year. So we do send our condolences out to her, but she is back with the team, and it looks like she's in good spirit. So we're going to have to see how she answers to that. Losing to a parent is never easy. Of course, you got Jen Cross coming back, Emily Maglio after a big year for THY in Turkey, and then Bree King, who just came off the Best Setter award in the Brazilian League. The one notable omission, I think, on this roster of someone who is truly up and coming and could definitely be on this roster is Anna Schmreck, who is still at Wisconsin. She's an NCAA Finals MVP and will make an impact on the national team in the future. It just isn't going to happen yet.
Okay, next on the list is China, ranked 5th in the world, always a classically dominant program at the top of the women's level. I would say they're like just in that echelon just below the main contenders, like in Italy, Serbia, Brazil, United States. I would put up there. China just behind them in their world ranking matches. That they finished 4th in last year's VNL, at least in the preliminary round, then lost to Italy in the quarterfinals of last year's VNL. finished 6th at the World Championship. But I think we got to start with the notable omissions for China. That's no Zhu Ting, who's been their best player of a generation for sure, and no Di Yao, who set Zhu Ting at Scandicci in Italy this year. They do return Li Yingying, the left-hander on the left side, who was 6th in scoring among all players at the World Championship last year. She's going to be their offensive workhorse across from Wang Yunlu. And then Yuan Jinwei is a very good, kind of generally underrated middle blocker that can anchor them in the middle and score some points. But without Zhu, I think there's definitely a ceiling on this Chinese team. I think 4th, 5th-ish is about exactly where I would put them. I expect them to make the finals, but if they won a game in the finals, I would be a bit surprised. I think without Zhu Ting, without like a true offensive workhorse at the elite levels in women's volleyball, you've got a bit of a ceiling on your team. So that's kind of my expectation for China this year.
All right, now new to the Volleyball Nations League is world number 27, Croatia. Croatia qualified through the Volleyball Challenger Cup last year, winning the European Gold League and then beating Belgium in the finals at the VCC in 2022. Now, Croatia did qualify for this event, but did have a very, very disappointing World Championships, not making out a pool and finishing 22nd. So it's a bit of a mixed bag of what we're going to be able to expect here from this Croatian team. Now, this team is led by Exasha coach Farhat Akbas, who just unfortunately lost in both the Sultanlar Ligi finals and the Champions League finals, but still a fantastic coach. And their number one player is going to be Samantha Fabrice, who is also an Exasha player. Now, Croatia, they are returning the majority of their roster, their entire roster from their 2022 team. But as I said, it's going to be interesting to see how they can compete at this level. Once again, they did really, really well at the VCC, but then not so good at the World Championships. But they're definitely going to want to regain that upper echelon of teams. Another athlete to be looking at is Bozana Budigan, who's going to be one of their middles and one of their primary scorers as well.
All right, next on the list, the Dominican Republic, Las Reinas del Caribe, as they like to call them, the Queens of the Caribbean, ranked number 9 in the world, finished 9th at last year's VNL, just outside the playoffs, and 11th at last year's World Championship. And this is a team that has kind of dominated the NORCECA region as sort of the second best team behind the United States over the last decade or so. But I think Everett would definitely agree with me that Canada might be on the rise to take that spot, and the Dominican Republic is just kind of trying to cling on and stay there. They've got a couple veterans. They've got the legendary Bethania de la Cruz still coming back, but sort of in more of an off the bench sort of role. They've got some very good firepower. Isabel Pena on the left, Elizabeth Bryaleen on the left, and Zenaida Gonzalez on the right, plus probably the best libero in the world in Brenda Castillo. So Dominican Republic plays a very physical game, kind of high balls to the outsides, nothing crazy, nothing flashy, nothing all that technical, just big and physical. But they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody kind of in a given match. They are sort of remind me of Cuba on the men's side, just a little bit similar play styles. So making the playoffs would be a good year for the Dominican Republic. And just keep an eye on some of the young talent, some of the young physical arms who haven't broken out in Europe on the club level yet, but might have really good VNL seasons.
All right, next up we have number 13, Germany. Now, Germany last year at the VNL was in that clump of teams, along with a few others at 4 and 8, but they did ultimately finish 10th and then folded up with a 14th at the World Championships. Now, this team is led by the one and only Mr. Vital Heinen, who we've seen on the men's side and the women's side, currently coaches on the women's side in Turkey right now, also has a history with club volleyball in Germany at the professional stage. So going to be very, very interesting to see how he can put his imprint on this team. This team is mostly bringing back all of their players from last year. Of course, Hannah Orthman, who had a pretty good year at THY, Lena Stigroth, Camila Wetzel, and of course, Lena Alsmeyer, who was their second top scorer last year. I do think Germany is one of those solid teams that they can kind of beat anyone, but also potentially lose to anyone. So it's going to be interesting to see how Vital can manage this team, especially since they are one of the core teams, and how they're going to be able to make their way through the VNL this year.
Okay, moving on to the reigning champions. The Italian women ranked number 2 in the world, won last year's VNL, then took bronze at the World Championship. Coach Davide Mazzanti has a gigantic pool of players to pull from. We've covered the Italian Women's League all year long. They have just a crazy amount of talent at every position to pull from, but we got to start with the one notable omission. And even though Paola Egonu is on the preliminary roster, the 30-player roster, it has been announced that she will not play the VNL. She will take the first part of the summer off and get ready for Eurovolley and the Olympic qualifiers. So what does Italy do to replace their primary scorer and potentially the best player in the world? They've got kind of two options on the right side, in my opinion. One is Silvia Nwakalor, and the other is this Antropova character who, if you haven't heard about this, she's been kind of battling with her citizenship. It wasn't sure if she was going to be considered Russian or Italian. Well, that battle has ended. She is Italian, eligible to play for the Italian national team, had a great year at Scandicci, and in Egonu's absence, I think it's going to be Antropova's spot on the right side as the primary scorer for this Italian team for VNL. Could easily win this tournament again, even without Egonu on the roster. That's how good Italy is. That's how deep they are at every position. They're outstanding in the middle. I really like Alessia Oro at the setter spot. No Ophelia Malinov, the backup setter on the roster, but they've got plenty of options behind her. They've got one of the best liberos in the world in Monica De Gennaro. So my only question is, where's the scoring going to come from? Can they get a little bit more offense out of the outside hitter position in Egonu's absence? We will see.
All right, next up we have the world number 6, Japan. Now, Japan, doesn't matter, the men and women's, they are always going to be dangerous. Last year they finished 7th at the VNL and 5th at the World Championships. And Japan is going to be bringing back pretty much their entire team. And one thing we know about Japan is they are chock full of talent, especially on the outside. You know, you've got Arisa Anui, Hayashi Kotona, Mayu Ishikawa, and then Serena Koga, of course, or now Nishida, as she married our favorite Nishida from the men's team as well. So they are the new power couple in volleyball. Of course, Satomi Fukudome as libero, and Seki will be running that fast offense for Japan as well. And now Japan is always kind of just on the outskirts of the semifinals, and they always seem to threaten, you know, if we go back to that World Championship quarterfinal, the epic matchup against Brazil last year that had so many of us up off our feet. Would love to see Japan kind of break through and get into that top 4 this summer at the VNL.
Okay, next up we have Korea, a core team, and for that reason and that reason alone, they are still playing VNL without Kim Young-kyun, one of the best players of all time, who's retired from the national team. Korea last year put up an embarrassing performance, 0-12. I think they won 3 sets total. They were bad at the World Championship as well, but they're not going to get relegated because they have money, because they're Korea. But without Kim on this team, Korea has no chance. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they finish dead last again this year. Thanks for participating. Let's move on.
Now, from one team who maybe should have been relegated last year but weren't due to their core team status, to maybe another team. I think Netherlands is going to struggle this year in the VNL. They're missing some of their top players from last year, and they've got a brand new coach. So there's going to be a lot of change on the Dutch side, but they are a core team. So much to their credit, they're going to be able to use this event to kind of try some things out in preparations for the tournaments to come later on this summer. They're currently ranked 12th in the world. They were 11th in the VNL last year and 12th at the World Championships. I think the most notable exclusions for this roster is going to be Flor Savel-Kohl. Hopefully I said that properly. I apologize if I didn't. She was their top scorer at the VNL last year. And then Anne Buis, who was their second top scorer at the World Championships. That's 2 big arms that they're going to be missing on the left side. Nika Dalderup is on this roster, although we didn't see her last year at the 2022 VNL. We only saw her at the World Champs, so it's going to be kind of up in the air to see if she's going to be playing. So I think a lot of the offensive output is going to fall on the shoulders of Celeste Plack, the opposite. And of course, they have 2 fantastic setters to go to. They have Laura Dikema and Britt Bongartz. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Netherlands kind of work with their rosters. I do think they're going to go quite a bit younger and work with some different formations and some different looks to prepare for the Olympic qualifiers and the Eurovolley later in the summer.
Okay, next on the list, we've got Poland. It's actually crazy to think about Poland as a challenger team, given how much of a mainstay their men's team is in the international stage. But Poland's women are kind of a team on the rise in the international game. Coach Stefano Lavarini has control of this squad. They're ranked 10th in the world, 13th at last year's VNL, which wasn't so good, but then 7th at the World Championship. They almost made it into that final 6 group. They've got the best setter in the world in Joanna Wołosz. That we've got to talk about her. She is just the best. Won 4 titles with Conegliano this year. They've got Magdalena Stysiak, who is one of the best opposites in the world, top 10 at least, but she spent a lot of this season on the bench in Italy. They also, I believe, are bringing back Malvina Smarzek, who's another opposite option. How are they going to use those two players? It's going to be interesting. They did, however, lose Zuzana Goretzka just a couple weeks ago in the finals of the Taron Liga to a torn ACL, and she's probably their best, also youngest, ball control sort of outside hitter. So first contact might be an issue for this Polish women's team, but second contact with Wołosz at the center, never going to be a problem. And they've got some pretty good arms. But how is Lavarini going to attack this summer? I don't exactly know. They would have to play their best lineup for a lot of this VNL to have a good chance to make the playoffs. Is that even going to be worth it for them? It's kind of the same situation as the Netherlands, like Everett was just talking about. They are going to be a threat, though, in Eurovolley and Olympic qualifiers. They've got great volleyball culture in Poland, obviously, but definitely a team to watch out for. What is their strategy going to be from the top?
Next up, we have definitely the team of the year from 2022, Serbia. Now, Serbia was a team that medaled at both events last year. They got bronze at the VNL. Most importantly, without Tijana Boskovic, everyone kind of thought they were going to be dead in the water without their high-powered opposite, and yet they ran all the way to the Final Four and picked up some hardware. And then, of course, are the World Championships from 2022. Now, the biggest change to this roster isn't going to be on the court. It's going to be off the court with Santarelli being out and bringing in Giovanni Guidetti. Now, one Italian for another. These are 2 elite coaches, but they come by the game in very, very different approaches. Of course, Santarelli is a little bit more laid back, is a little calmer, and Guidetti is known for being very passionate on the sideline. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works with his roster. A few of the notable things: Maja Oljenovic, the setter from Exasha Basha, will be back on the roster this year. She wasn't featured last year, but the question is, will they even need her, right? Dursa did a fantastic job and won 2 medals with this team. To me, Dursa has to be the starting setter here. Also, Boskovic, we didn't see her last year at the VNL. Will we see her at this event? They proved that they could still win hardware without her last year. Maybe they just give her the summer off until you get to the bigger events of the summer, the Olympic qualifiers and Eurovolley. Other than that, of course, you have Stevanovic in the middle, and then both Lozo and Busa on the outside. And of course, we can't forget Pusic as libero. I would expect Serbia, with or without a Boskovic, to be one of those top teams and to be fighting for a medal at the end of the VNL.
All right, next up, moving to Southeast Asia, we've got Thailand, ranked number 15 in the world. They would be hosting a week of preliminary round play this year. They finished 8th at last year's VNL. They did make the playoffs just barely, but lost to the number 1 seed Turkey in last year's quarterfinals. Finished 13th at the World Championship last year. They bring back pretty much the entire team that we've known to expect. Thailand definitely a fan favorite. They've got a huge following in their home country and beyond. Couple good arms. This Kachu-on character that we saw at the outside last year, one of their primary scorers, across from Ajaraporn on the outsides, and then Pimpi Chaya the opposite. Undersized team, Thailand, but really fast. They play really technically. It's a fun style of volleyball to watch, but I think their ceiling is kind of about where they finished last year, about like 8th. If they made the playoffs again this year, I would be pleasantly surprised. But they're playing a week at home. That'll certainly help. So we'll see if Thailand, with their unique play style, can kind of crack that playoff spot this year.
Well, Rob, I'm glad that you had Thailand because we all know you're better at pronouncing names than I am. So good job on that one. Next up is Turkey. And now, if there's one team that has been threatening over the past few years of getting into those elite teams, it's definitely Turkey. Now, we talked about Serbia earlier and them losing coach Daniele Santarelli and getting Guidetti. That's because it was in a coaching swap, basically, with Turkey. It wasn't a straight-up trade. That's just how it worked out. And now Turkey will be getting in what is our judgment anyways, probably the best coach in the world right now, Daniele Santarelli. So it's going to be interesting to see how he affects this roster. Now, there's no omissions of this roster. They've got pretty much everyone back, but the one big addition now they have is Melissa Vargas. And if you're someone who only watches national team season, don't worry. Melissa Vargas is originally of Cuban descent. She was born in Cuba, grew up in Cuba, and just like on the men's side, has now been naturalized to play for Turkey. So it's going to be very interesting because Vargas is an opposite, but so is Everett Karakurt. So they have both of their best players on the opposite position. If you know anything about Turkish national team volleyball, you know that the one spot that they have some holes in is on the left side. So how will Santarelli work with, you have two very, very talented, two very, very high-powered opposites on one side of the court. How are they going to be able to work out to be able to get their best hitter, both of their best hitters on the court, especially since traditionally Turkey has been a little bit thin on the left side. The rumors we're hearing so far is that Karakurt is going to be moving to the left side, but I would expect, especially throughout the group stage of the VNL, to kind of see each of them take a little bit of time, especially as they try to integrate Vargas into the rest of this roster.
All right, last but not least, we have my beloved United States of America, the Olympic gold medalist from Tokyo 2 years ago, but last year didn't win any hardware. Are ranked 4th in the world right now. Actually lost in the quarterfinals to Serbia. I think that's technically a 5th place finish at last year's VNL, despite finishing 11-1 and first in the preliminary round, and then lost the bronze medal match to Italy at the World Championship. So Coach Karch Karai, who is a legend, has some work to do with this team this year. And I'm going to do a full dedicated deep dive preview into this USA women's team in a separate video. But as you see on the screen, notable players, literally all of them. The entire USA roster is notable, just chock full of huge superstar players. But one that we've definitely got to talk about, Jordan Larson is back. We thought that she had retired from the national team after winning an Olympic gold in Tokyo. We thought just she had retired from volleyball, period. But she's come back and played a couple good club seasons in the Italian league, and now Karai has been able to convince her to come back, provide some leadership. Jordan Thompson as well is worth talking about. She had an unbelievable final series, losing in the finals in Italy. But again, like we talked about earlier in the episode, USA is hosting the VNL finals. They automatically qualify. What does that mean for Karch Karai's roster choices? And as a sort of teaser for the dedicated USA video we'll put out very soon, we know the week 1 roster that's going to play this coming week. Almost all the superstars, almost all the Olympians not making that trip. So we'll break that down later, but the USA is going to be very interesting to follow this year. They need hardware, especially hosting the finals.
All right, that is just a quick breakdown of all 16 teams at the VNL. Of course, if you want to know a little bit more, you're going to have to tune into our content throughout the rest of the event. Of course, the 9x9 happening on Tuesdays and everything else going on. But now we're gonna make a few little predictions. We're gonna talk about who we think is our favorites, and give you some of our thoughts on what is going to go down throughout this 2023 VNL. So first and foremost, Rob, I mean, I think this one's going to be obvious when I ask it to you, but who do you think is going to win the VNL this year?
I'm going, you have no idea where this answer might be coming from. Certainly not the shirt that I'm wearing, but I'm going with my United States. I think this is a bounce back year for the USA. I think what we proved in 2021 is that you don't need that one superstar opposite to win at the international level. You kind of do need that player to win at the club level, but I don't think that you necessarily need that player at the national team level to have success. But we do have someone that's close in Jordan Thompson, and I think after sort of a disappointing summer last year and hosting the finals, I think it's going to be key. This is a big summer for the American women's national team. I've got us winning it. I think it's about time we picked up some VNL hardware for the first time since 2021.
All right, fair enough. That was to be expected, especially hosting it at home. For me, I think I'm going to go with Brazil. I think Brazil was the bridesmaid twice last year. They're bringing back the majority of their team. Gabi's in good form, Macris is good form, and a Christina. Like, they just have so many options and so much talent. They're a team that knows how to win. And I think there's something a little bit about that USA-Brazil rivalry where Brazil loves playing on US soil, just like the US loves playing on Brazilian soil. I love that the synergy and the rivalry those two Western Hemisphere teams have. So yeah, I think my pick to win this year is going to be Brazil.
Okay, that's an interesting pick. No, but neither of us going with Italy or Serbia. But we'll see. I mean, there's a chance that neither of those teams will have their superstars at this tournament. So
yeah, exactly. I think historically we've seen that Brazil likes to bring their superstars no matter what.
Yes, they do.
Right,
on both the men's and the women's side, they kind of just throw
Absolutely.
the entire roster out there for the whole tournament.
100%, right? So, which is, to our benefit on the men's side, as we'll be seeing Brazil in week one in Ottawa. But that's why I think that other teams are going to be tinkering and working with a few things and resting some of their superstars, where I think everyone on Brazil is going to be all in.
Okay, so how about an MVP pick? Maybe from Brazil, or maybe from the teams that we picked to win, but just sort of in general. Who do you think, what one player do you think is going to dominate this tournament?
Ooh, I don't know about dominate this tournament, but I think if we're going to be going for an MVP, and for me the MVP always has to be going for the winner, I picked Brazil. So I'm going to go with the obvious, Mrs. Gabi. Like, Gabi, we've seen her time and time again. She knows how to get it done in those big games. She was so good for them last year at the World Championship. She was so good for Vakif Bank this year. When they turned things around, it was really on her back. As we said, Egonu might be the one who scores points for Vakif Bank, but Gabi is the really one who drives the bus. So to me, if Brazil wins, MVP has to be Gabi.
Okay, and I like that pick. Gabi is clearly the best outside hitter in the world. Just such a treat to watch. MVP, if I'm going to stick with the U.S., which I will, I'm going to go with Jordan Thompson. Okay. Primary scoring, opposite sort of character. We didn't see her at the World Championship. She sat out with a concussion, and that was a big loss, because the one thing that the U.S. has been missing since that Olympic gold medal run is the outside hitter position. We had like Jordan Larson, Michelle Barch at that event. Neither of them played at all last year. We know Barch is retired. We're not sure what Larson's role is going to be this year. But with Jordan Thompson's season that she had this year in club, I was just so impressed with the scoring output that she put up in that final series in Italy. I think when we get to the finals, which the USA will no matter what, I think that Karch is going to give her the first couple weeks off. Given the crazy final series that she just played, she needs a bit of a break. And I think Karch now understands what this team is missing when Thompson is not there. I think she's getting up close to that top 5 opposite in the world sort of conversation, which is very high praise. And I think will be just the scorer that the U.S. needs to potentially win this tournament, with a little bit of inexperience at the outside position. So I'm going with Jordan Thompson, the Cincinnati girl.
All right, good pick. I like that, especially how good she was this year down the stretch.
Totally. So in a similar vein, who do you think is a player, Everett, that since we watched the whole club season, a player that people who only follow the national team might not be expecting, sort of a breakout player or a new player that you think is going to turn some heads this VNL?
Well, if you're a fan of the 9x9 and if you're on the Discord and whatnot, this one isn't going to be a breakout player to you. But if you're new to international volley, or only watch international volley but will be, for me, it's Melissa Vargas. She's never played internationally, really. She's going to be coming over from Cuba. She's high-powered. She's aggressive. She's good from the baseline. She's good offensively. I think she's going to have a huge impact on Turkey. If they can find a way to have both her and Gertrude on the court at the same time, it's going to work out in the best. But I think, especially with Santarelli coming in, there's no loyalty to any of the players. So I think it's going to be a clean slate, and I think Melissa Vargas is going to have a chance to really swing away, and she's going to turn a lot of heads this year at the VNL.
She is going to turn a lot of heads. I'm excited for people to watch her who have never seen her before, because of just how physical she is. She's like very much in that conversation with Bošković, Hawk, and Egonu as those 100%. Elite, like best opposites in the world. Like Vargas belongs in that conversation. If you don't believe us, you're going to see this summer for sure. My pick for breakout player, we mentioned her earlier, is Ekaterina Antropova of Italy. Yeah. I think, again, in Egonu's absence this VNL, because Paola Egonu will not play, that opposite spot, like Italy needs a scoring opposite to have success. Like they really do. They do. They rely on that so much. And Ekaterina Antropova is that player. and we just haven't seen her before because she was sorting out what country she was going to play for. Finally figured out it's going to be Italy, and she is eligible to play this VNL. I think she is going to explode onto the scene this year. She's big. She has a huge arm. She's got great range. She's a big blocking presence. She's exactly what Italy needs. I think she's going to have a huge summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're watching this and you're kind of thinking about, hey, what about this player, about that player from your specific country, let us know in the comments, right? Let us know. We can't be everywhere. We can't know everything. And of course, we're going to be learning quite a bit about some new players throughout the continuity of this event. So make sure you follow us on the 9x9 and all of our other content to find out who some of the more notable breakout players of this event are.
Last but not least, Everett, which of those 5 challenger teams, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Dominican Republic, and Poland, which of them gets relegated?
I think it's going to be Bulgaria. To me, it's going to be between Croatia and Bulgaria. Croatia is going to be the team coming in, but I think when you're the new team coming in, you have, some gusto behind you, and you can kind of just get through some matches just off pure adrenaline. I think Bulgaria is going to be missing so many of their players that they depend on. They're going to have a new setter, and they're going to be young. So I think it's going to be difficult for Bulgaria to get through this one.
Yeah, I agree. If Bulgaria had all their players, like all the players that we saw last year, I think it would be a toss-up between them and Croatia. But Croatia with Samantha Fabrice alone has more firepower in that one player than Bulgaria's entire roster. I just don't think Bulgaria is going to be able to score enough points. And like among those challenger teams, like Canada, Dominican Republic, and Poland are good. Like they're legitimately good. Like those 3 teams could make the playoffs. Bulgaria and Croatia will not make the playoffs, but I do think that Croatia is better than Bulgaria right now, and they're my pick to get relegated too.
Yeah, and I think we're both on the same page of that one. Do those 2 teams play each other?
Great question. We'll have to check that out on the website, on all the info for VNL you need. By the way, it's all online. The Volleyball Nations League website. We'll be covering
game
a lot
number
of it.
1.
Oh, seriously? They play each other game 1?
Game number 1
That's
on
awesome.
May 31st. So next Wednesday at 3 p.m. local time in Japan. I'm not entirely sure. 2 a.m. Eastern time.
Oh boy.
So if you're in North America like us, you're gonna have to either stay up super late or wake up very, very early. I think staying up late is better for a 2 a.m. But yeah, game number 1 could decide the fate of these 2 teams. That's awesome.
Love it when that happens.
Love that.
I love it.
Love
we kind of saw the same thing last year with Australia playing on the men's side. Like we knew that some of those matches would determine relegation, and so that's always really fun to follow along with. Yeah, we're going to be covering the heck out of this VNL, both men's and women's. I'm going to do a video previewing the United States women. Everett will do a video previewing the Canadian women. But it all gets started Tuesday, May 30th. That is so soon. Women's Volleyball Nations League. Make sure you check out the 9x9. We go live every Tuesday here on the YouTube channel at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll be doing a lot more past that, especially as Everett and I get together at a couple different points this summer. But it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good national team season. I'm really excited for it.
Absolutely. And if you want to follow the national team season as best as possible, the best way to do it is over on the Volleyball Source Discord. If you're not a part of it already, we have a fantastic community of like basically 1,200 of the biggest volleyball fans from around the world. We've got different sections and different servers for the majority of the countries, and that's where fans from each country discuss and fans from other countries ask questions about what's going on. So if you really want to get in depth with some of the best and biggest volleyball fans and just some of the best community in volleyball, come join us over on the Volleyball Source Discord.
Yep, link is in the description. So thanks for watching. We are excited about this VNL. Starts this Tuesday on Volleyball World TV. We'll see you next time on the Volleyball Source Network.
Peace.